Hey people, good evening. How are you doing? Welcome. 15th of January, February, March 2022, and you are listening to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, also videocast because we record it live. And it's the first time this evening actually where I've come in and the room's already pretty full. So that I don't know if that's connected to our guest. It might just be correlation and not causation. We can talk about that later on. But wow, you people have just kind of come in full glory. So if you are listening to the podcast, then the reason I'm saying this is because, as always, it is recorded live on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock British time. And if you do come in, then I'm able to bring your comments up into the room, like on the screen at the moment. We got Gary Benson, founder of the STA, saying good evening all. We got all of the full-timers here. Leslie Campbell is here. Hey, Leslie, how you doing? Stephen Barr says, good evening, people. How are we all? Grand, I hope. So it really is, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but it's a great place to hang out with soft tissue therapists. You don't have to be a member of the STA whatsoever to join us. In fact, it's a really nice way of having a look to see what the STA is all about. And if you are in the UK in particular, then we've got regional reps who are here as well. So if you've got some information or you want to meet up with someone and have a chat about what's happening in your area, then it's a great way of networking as well. Catherine Reimer has come in the room as well. Hey, Catherine, how you doing? Phil Griffiths. Geez, I'm not going to have time to say everybody who's in here. It seems that we've attracted a few people, which I'm sure my guest tonight actually probably is not bothered at all. But I'm pleased about it. So I'm looking forward to that. Before I do bring you our guest for tonight, I just shout out for what we've had this week on the Sports Therapy Association podcast, because these months are working really well. If I say so myself, I don't like to pat myself on the back very often, but the feedback I'm getting from focusing on one topic per month has been really cool. We've had prior to this a whole month on women's health, which went down really well because it kept people talking about it and asking questions and contacting the speakers and all sorts of stuff. And then this month, the focus has been on CPD, so continuing professional development in the UK in March and April. We started off talking with Mike Grice and Daniel Williams about dermoneuromodulation, which is coming to the UK for the first time. Very excited about that. In fact, the first one happened this weekend, if I remember rightly. We've got Mike Rioch and Ray Allen coming over from the States to teach that in Birmingham and in Exeter. And if I remember rightly, yeah, the first one was this weekend, but the Exeter one is next weekend. James Morgan, if you're listening, correct me on that. And then part 2 is in June. So you've still got time if you want to get to the Exeter one, or if you know a little bit about dermoneuromodulation already and you're familiar with Diane Jacobs' work, then there's no reason why you don't just sign up for the day 2, which is in June. Full information given in the normal places in our show notes. There's all links and everything to that. We went on from that to last week, a really enjoyable conversation with Dr. Peter Maliaras, who, if you don't know, is just really, really high in terms of tendinopathy research. And also really, really nice example, because he's been around so long. He's a good example of somebody who has evolved, understood how things are changing a little bit, changing the narrative. And with regards to tendinopathy, we had a wonderful chat about how things have changed a little bit, how research is challenging previous assumptions. Really healthy episode for anybody who is working with clients or patients suffering from tendinopathy. So do check it out. As always, if you want to watch the video, it's on YouTube. If you want to just catch up with the audio, then just look for the Sports Therapy Association podcast on your preferred app. Subscribe to that because you get notification of when new episodes are being uploaded, and that's how it works. You can also listen to it on our website, thesta.co.uk, and that's where the show notes are as well. We move on tonight to somebody who, for some of you, who, especially those who join us live, probably know this name very well. So hopefully, always my intention, some of you who download the podcast afterwards, hopefully you haven't heard of him, because it's going to be, for a lot of you, I think, a great experience to get to know this guy and what he's been doing and what he's done for an awful long time. I've been standing on his shoulders probably for about, I want to say about a decade, but that makes me feel old and probably him even older. But definitely one of the giants who affected my understanding and journey as a healthcare provider, along with the likes of Paul Ingram, who I interviewed as well on One Chat Live, and people like Tony Ingram as well, people like who else who I'll give a shout out to, Todd Hargrove. I mean, great thinkers for me. Okay, so it might not be, we've talked about this before, we talked about it a little bit off air, it might not be the person for you, but it's all about finding someone. I just heard him go, that could happen. But that's normal. Okay. But I definitely want you to check out Greg Lehman. Go to greglehman.ca. So many blogs out there. Fantastic website with an amazing manual, which you can educate yourself, which you can give out to patients, all free. Real credit to the industry, and always happy to give out information to anybody who wants it and wants to listen. So really looking forward to bringing him up tonight. I think that's everything in terms of housekeeping. So as always, if you've got questions, if you have joined us live, then feel free to type something into the comments. Claire Walker's just come in the door there. Good evening. Love your podcast. Well, thanks, Claire. Makes me feel kind of special as well. But it's all really down to the guests. I just asked some questions. And Glenn Murphy. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for joining us as well. Marvelous. Right. So without further ado, I think that's a long enough introduction. I shall bring up Gregory Lehman. Hey, Greg. How you doing?
Good. You?
I'm okay. I was listening to your kind of feedback from the lobby underneath every time I said something, which meant to kind of like laugh. And yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for giving up your time, first of all. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I get I'm quite a melancholic person anyway, but we talked off air. It's been 7 years since tomorrow, actually. It was on a Wednesday when you did I think it was the first time you did kind of the reconciling biomechanics with pain course in the UK.
Oh, for sure.
It was, wasn't it? 7 years ago. And I love kind of looking. Oh, I've got rid of you. Hold on.
Good.
I love getting a little bit melancholic, and I did bring up some photos just to take you back there a little bit. That was you with Mr. Chu back in 2015 in our little Studio 57 clinic. You got Chu on the treadmill.
And he puked the night before. I don't know if because we went for a run and I was doing a tempo, and he's fit, but he's not a runner. And we did a 6K tempo at a 4:30 kilometer. Can't let him forget that.
I remember you saying the lad did well. He kept up with quite a long time. He was doing it, but then at the end he just let himself all go, didn't he? Yeah, bless him. But a beautiful relationship that happened there. And then also with a lovely lunch and stuff down in Brighton. And then also this was at a later date, but you were doing kind of dual Adams, wasn't it? Aspire Bushy as well, and you kind of came and video bombed or podcast bombed one of the Physio Matters podcast episodes with myself and Tom. So yeah, we have met on a few occasions. You also were there on the recent or the 2020 One Chat Live conference. So we've known each other for a while. Remember that? Yeah. Well, you were kind of that was amazing. You know what? I had 10 amazing guests, and yet what people were talking about was, I can't believe that even just in the lunchtime drop-ins, you had Alex Hutchinson, you had Greg Lehman, you had JF Asculia. These people just dropping in, Manuel Basomi. You had, you just popped in lunchtime. I think you were still in bed. You were just lying back. I remember at one stage it was you, it was JF Asculia, and it was also Kevin Maggs. It was kind of like almost like Christmas Carol with the past and the future of the running clinic. It was a beautiful moment. So anyway, you've been around a while. For people who don't know you, just give us a bit of a breakdown on how long you have been around. Take it
1973. I've been around this space forever. Like, I'm getting tired since, I started my master's in 96, and that was in spine biomechanics, but I was into like the biopsychosocial model of pain then. I think I told you I wrote a paper in 1997 in ergonomics class on phantom limb pain. Nothing's new. I can tell everyone that.
And that is, it's a mixture, isn't it? It must be frustrating for you because, and I think sometimes if people do check you out on social media, you can sense sometimes the anger, you can sense the frustration. And I think that's why sometimes I when I recommend you to people, like when I'm teaching and they say, who should I follow and who should I look at? Because social media can be such a great thing. I say your name, obviously, but I say it's like he's had needles stuck in him every day for about 25 years, turning these kind of needles around, winding him up. So it's got to be tricky. But do you ever feel like you're going to break, or is it just part of the parcel of being ahead of your time back in the 90s?
I think I got a break, but you get tired of the same discussions. And then what's interesting is like, especially with Twitter, you can have a discussion with someone 8 years ago through the years, and then over time you see them taking your argument that you said to them, and then they're saying it kind of back to you or to someone else, and they were mad at you for saying these things a long time ago, and now you see them saying these things, and I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be difficult. But
Yeah, whatever.
regardless
It's
of
not
that,
difficult, but yeah.
you still
Anyways.
managed to be a fantastic educator, and I'm really glad that you still are very active and you have loads of things going on. And what we're here to talk about tonight is the course, which, let me just bring this up again. You're having a little bit of a travel around the world, aren't you? Been going for 7 years. Oh no, was it happening before the UK? Had you already done a few courses in your
I've
own?
done a few, but that 2015 was when I really started. Like,
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe right before you guys, I did Argentina, a bunch, a lot in Sweden, Norway. So that's when it kicked off, and then I haven't stopped.
I'm just going to bring this up on full screen so people watching the show can actually see it, because it's tiny font, but we can still hear you even though I'm going to put this up on full screen. So it looks like this weekend, actually, you're off to the Rocky Mountains. And then the one which is interesting for people in the UK is the weekend after, from the Rocky Mountains, you're going to Cork
2 weeks
in
after.
Ireland. 2 weeks after, sorry.
Yeah.
So on the 2nd of April, that's true. You're going to be there, which is only like a stone's throw, really, from England, and you can get over there pretty quickly and easily. So you're going to be over there. And tickets are still available, you've said. So just getting that in there now, if you listen to the podcast and it's not already April the 2nd, then you have a chance to see everything we're going to talk about today in the flesh, live in Ireland. And then rather incredibly, the weekend after that, you're back to Canada again. Yeah?
Yeah, on the other side, though. I mean, I got to come home.
True, I guess. Yeah. And it's kind of on the way, isn't it? Cork from the Rocky Mountains, if you draw a line with the crow flies, and it's kind of,
Yeah, sure.
You may as well have done it that way.
Yeah.
But hey, yeah, Cork is the place if you're still interested. But yeah, you'll be back in the UK again, isn't it? So it's not like now or never. So first question then. As we kind of mentioned off air, the purpose of the Sports Therapy Association podcast for me when I created it was giving a friendly, safe place for therapists who have the balls basically to understand that maybe the narrative they've been given on their £3,000-4,000 course was slightly outdated, and they're like, I know something's up, something's wrong. I didn't like dipping my toes into Twitter. It was very scary. I saw someone called Adam Meekins saying that manual therapy sucks, and all I need to do is get people strong, and it just scared the hell out of me. So I've heard, though, that Matt Phillips and the Sports Therapy Association podcast is a little bit friendlier place, and the guests you get on are friendlier. So imagine someone listening to the podcast is in that frame of mind. They're maybe an undergraduate. They've been taught still improving circulation of blood, breaking down scar tissue, all the PNFs and METs and all the acronyms you can think of. What would be your message for that person listening now who's like, you've got 2 minutes to keep them listening or 2 minutes to run away and think, no, this is too much?
Too much, I should be an accountant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just chuck in your career. How are you going to keep them listening?
My point of being so critical, through the years, and honestly, we did this with my master's and the colleagues that were doing their PhD with me, was to simplify and make it easier. That was it, because there's so much CE is making people feel stupid because they have these complex and complicated narratives about what's going on with the body, and you feel dumb and you don't feel any, and you don't know what they're talking about, so you feel like you're inadequate, and so you want to go take their course because you think that they have some special knowledge, right? And that special knowledge isn't that special. That's the thing. And so the point of being critical is just to simplify things, that you're still doing a great job in what you're doing, and the reason you're helping people is probably very complex, but your interventions are quite simple. That's it. Like we make things way harder than they have to be. Like you have all these stupid rules for movement or stupid rules on the right way to do manual therapy, and you don't need any of those things for the most part, right?
That's nice. That's a good buy-in. That's cool. So you are going to make people, you in the business of making people's lives easier.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Like often I made some Jesus Christ joke at a conference where I was like, I've gone through all of the bullshit biomechanical ideas, so you don't have to. Like, I'm on the biomechanical cross for your sins, but now you can go to now you can go. Yeah, it was very offensive. Now you can go to heaven because I've gone through all the bullshit.
Where did you say you did this? What
San Diego Pain Summit. I think that's online. You can go see that.
Really?
Like, it looks like I'm on coke. Like, my wife's like, the more people in the audience, like, the worse you behave. And like, I don't know what's wrong with me.
I'd love to see you do that down in the South, deep South or something.
Oh God. So that's what I do. I was teaching in some Catholic hospital once, and then every joke is about Christ. Like, and I never make religious jokes, but boom, I'm just pulling shit out about my 4-year-old breastfeeding baby Jesus. Once we're at an Irish pub, and she loved Jesus even though she was an atheist, and so we bought her like a Jesus action figure, and she's like 3 waiting to get into the pub, and she's like, "Dad, look, Jesus having booby," and she's pulled her top down. Anyways, so like, I haven't told that story since I was back in the Catholic hospital. So
of course, yeah, I haven't had the reason. Yeah, no, so it's good. Shock value.
Okay.
But no, I like that. So people listening, and it's healthy. I mean, one of the things about I like doing video is because when they see you and they can see you smiling and they see you're human, then I think it makes it potentially a lot more of a valuable resource for learning than just reading streams and conversations which are limited to words and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, words, and we miss people's intentions too easily online and Twitter. Do we really understand what the other person's saying? Have we really gotten across what we're saying? Are we really that different? Like, what are we really talking about? And that gets missed too often.
Good point. You're happy doing, I mean, what was it like for you? I mean, you do online courses as well, and you've had to, like a lot of people, but do you kind of like the face-to-face stuff as well?
I haven't really done much online. No more over COVID than I did before. I would occasionally do 1 to 2 hour seminars, but I think I did one day course. That was like maybe a 2-day course. That's pretty rare.
Like, you introduced, go on.
I was just gonna say, I did put all my material online. Like, if people wanted to get it and sign up, but then if people, that's what I like about that, is if they sign up, then you get to use that as a credit to an in-person. So I'm glad COVID kind of stimulated me to do that, which is nice. So then when you take the course, you have like 13 hours of recorded lectures as well. Because I hated taking courses and then like forgetting what they said and what was the nuance and what are the cases. And so,
I think that's a really nice way of doing it. And I don't think that maybe some places are changing that to mimic you, but yeah, I love the way you do that, so that if you do go to the course and then you want to catch up with it, you haven't got to pay for it again or something, or it's like if you buy a book, you've got it on your shelf. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? But it's really nice.
You'd think so. And I know people want to say, oh, things are changing, it's updating. Not principles and fundamentals don't really change that much. The things that we quibble over, yeah, maybe. Like, I'd be curious with Pete Malieris how much it's really changed. What I would guess is that he's just more open to other interventions. Where 5 years ago, people would be like, oh no, you got to load it heavy or the tendon won't adapt. And now people are saying, oh, okay, I guess we have more options. That's what research sort of says, that there's more options to help people. Too many people are in the business of saying, no, that sucks. And really it's, no, that sucks, but you can do other things as well. Anyway, sorry, I got off.
No, it's fine. That's true. No, Pete, it was. I followed Pete for quite a long time. He did some work with Tom, and it was really interesting to see. I mean, he again, a lot of the stuff which he was saying made me think of people like yourself who were saying these things kind of 10, 15 years ago, in the sense that we got to realize the research for tendinopathy is not that good.
No.
And we should never kind of like just have one tool in our box. You got to be open to other things, and all of these things which, probably make you think, yeah. Do you think? So, but it was healthy. And just saying hi to Grenier Walsh. How you doing? Thanks for joining us. And also a very special hello to Wamurfu. I'm not sure I got the pronunciation for that right. Why should I listen to Greg over Andrew Locke? Okay, I'm not sure whether Wamurfu is a plant here for Andrew Locke, but there we go.
I think they're joking.
I think they're joking. Okay, so let me put a picture up, because this for me kind of made me think, and it's a symbol which has become rather synonymous with you. Put it up here, and I want you to explain it. There you go. What's all that about?
It's when I impregnated a bear.
Exactly.
Obviously, she's due any day.
The bear is, it's been linked for a long time. People still talking about it like it's new, but it's very successful. And I wanted to, for somebody who's not familiar with the bear, what is it?
So I had a patient this morning, and so many people are afraid of pain, people in pain, and therapists as well. And 10 years ago, I'd be saying, you're allowed to poke into pain. You can poke the bear, just don't hump the shit out of it. Like, it's something a lot of people know intuitively. And I would say there's a subset of people who don't realize that, who think that as soon as they have pain, there's something wrong. You have to really not just respect it, but like bow down to it. So all it's saying is, yeah, you're allowed to have some discomfort, but don't be an idiot about it. There's no need to be macho, like this, no pain, no gain. Pain is weakness leaving the body, whatever people say. So that's all it is. And it's a freeing message to a lot of people, where you're telling me I'm safe, I can do yoga again. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Just don't be an idiot about it. Which isn't always easy. Like, I'm certainly an idiot quite often and things flare up, but it's okay.
It's a really nice symbol and kind of like metaphor to you, although it's probably not a metaphor in Canada because you do have bears, but for us over in the UK, it's a nice metaphor which people can use with patients. I think it's a nice metaphor that therapists can use with themselves when they think about what they're doing, if they're scared to actually cause pain, or if they're getting a client to perform some exercise and not quite sure whether they should do it with no pain at all or whether they should put up with loads of pain. But I also like the way that, for me, when I first saw it with you, you kind of showed that, again, work with the individual in front of you, because some people are going to be kind of too scared to touch the bear at all, okay, and they're going to avoid any sort of pain. But then other people, particularly maybe kind of like seasoned runners, are going to be quite happy, as you say, to have the shit out of the bear because they think that no pain, no gain. So you've got to look at the person in front of you, which is a good message.
Yeah, and so then the clinical decision there, like where being a therapist is hard. It's not really choosing the right exercise. It's sometimes knowing when to poke and when to back off, and under what conditions. Because there's certainly times, and this is why you still need to be a good clinician. There's certainly times where something could be sinister or serious, and oh no, someone else has to get in here and give us a hand, some other medical professional or something. So you still have to be a good clinician and know what's going on. And then, of course, sometimes we do want to back off.
Leslie Campbell has just said in here, I've used the bear loads, probably weekly. Yeah, I mean, it's really useful. It won't ring true with everyone. And I also love, thanks to people like Greg and Mike James, actually, it's knowing that sometimes the patient's coming up with their own metaphor, their own idea. But for a lot of people, the idea of an angry bear, it's not going to go away if you ignore it. If you start kind of slapping it around the faces, it's just going to keep mauling you. So it's a nice way to educate and get a coin to drop. Manual therapy. I mean, a lot of the people in the Sports Therapy Association have gone via the route of massage therapy, and they probably still embrace a little massage. Is massage a nice way of kind of helping pacify the bear and making it go away eventually? What do you think about massage?
Yeah, I have no problem with manual therapy. I mean, and again, this is when you look at the criticisms of manual therapy, it's because of what people say about it. That was my thesis 25 years ago, was on spine manipulation. And all we really concluded was it's not doing what we say it's doing, but it can still be potentially helpful. And that's it. And there's been 25 years of research on that. And then you'll have people, often when people, shit on manual therapy, like you'll hear people say, oh, don't use it for tendinopathy. And they'll be very adamant about this, and they believe you got to load the tendon. And then you're like, well, why? Like, what's the issue? Oh, well, that won't build up the capacity of the tendon, with some nebulous term like capacity. And then, well, what do you mean? Well, it won't make the tendon stiffer, and the tendon has to get built up. And I'm like, well, that's a huge assumption. Your assumption there is that tendon needs to adapt in that way. That's what's stopping someone from performing, and that may or may not be true. That person can have a pain problem. That's it. That's what's going on. They have tendon-related pain. That's all we can say. And so for a subset of people, manual therapy might actually be the thing that helps them, because they've been doing heavy loading for 6 months. Or you look at the research and you look at how the tendon changes with heavy loading over time, or heel drops or something, and there's no change in the tendon quality, yet those people got better. So again, that's what I mean. People are often telling therapists not to do something based on some assumption of what they think something has to happen, that's a mediating variable for recovery. And their assumption is a massive assumption that hasn't been proven. And they're not really that evidence-based. They just say that they are.
Is this something
a lot in there?
Yeah, no. Is this something which comes out in your course? I'm trying to imagine how your course might have changed it from since it went started in the UK 7 years ago, but
it's the same. If you remember, I always put manual therapy under that big block of symptom modification, right? I used to do lots of back cracking, and I never once cracked a back thinking I was putting a joint into a different place or as changing the gamma gain on a muscle spindle. The reason I would crack a back was because someone had low back pain. That's all I needed to know. It hurts here? Okay, let's manipulate your spine. And then my professor would be like, what's your reference for that? And I'd be like, Lehman, 2000, jackass. I referenced myself. Yeah, the peak of arrogance. He's like, get the fuck out of here, Greg. I remember because I was like, you can't be specific. I don't care what joint, L3, L4, L5, maybe L7 if you're lucky. Isn't that like a girl band in the UK? L7?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person.
I don't know.
S Club 7 or something.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's the sacrals. Yeah, it's the S Club, not the L Club. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so the point is that's where manual therapy falls. It's a symptom modifier. Is that all you're going to do? Well, for some people, that's all you maybe need to do. I would never just do that, but I just have trouble shitting on things if you're evidence-based, and then you're like, well, where's the evidence for this? Like if manual therapy was so horrible for low back pain or neck pain, then we would see that in the literature when it's compared against an exercise intervention. It would just be it would be, you wouldn't even need stats. You would just be able to look at it and say, oh, there's a massive difference between the two. But there isn't when you look at the research. It's like, okay, whatever. So
this is really healthy to hear. Because I think that again, on social media, for soft tissue therapists who I don't know what it's like in Canada. I know what it's like. Well, actually, I do, because we've spoken to guests from Canada. Although in Canada, massage is kind of like paid for, isn't it, by the government? You can actually insurance. You can get massage for free. It's
not government, just private healthcare.
Is it private healthcare?
A lot of people do have private healthcare.
Was it? Yeah. So it's kind of, people will come in for their regular massage because they're getting paid to have it, and that's a great business for massage therapists. But in the UK, in terms of education, the UK is still churning out a lot of the old stuff. And if you have just done a course, just a disclaimer, and you're being told things like massage improves circulation, massage is breaking down knots, all that kind of like lock and release, and you're holding onto a muscle at the origin and then moving the limb, and then you're stretching the muscle in that segment. It's fine. It's okay. Don't worry. Don't run away. You're going to read stuff saying probably that's bullshitting it, people calling it out and making you feel really insignificant. But what I like about you, Greg, and your message is that you're not saying stop doing all that stuff. You're just saying make it simpler. Stop kind of thinking that the reason I'm doing this is because this is what's happening to the body. Think about the person you're doing it on, whether they like it, whether they're enjoying it, and what message they're getting through it. You don't have to throw everything out, do you?
Yeah, that's it.
Fair enough.
I mean, I did active release technique, which is that pin the muscle, break up the adhesion. I never bought into it, but I still found people still found it helpful. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm with you. We're helping you move differently, and you're moving with less pain. That's it. Actually, for a long time, what I thought I was doing was mechanotransduction. I thought it was loading up tendons and catalyzing like a healing building response. I was wrong.
Do you definitely know you're wrong?
I'm pretty sure. I don't think you can rub yourself to hypertrophy. You can't just rub. Otherwise, you could rub your biceps, right? And they would grow. I'd be on that program. I don't think it catalyzes mechanotransduction in that way.
Yeah, we chatted last week about that. So if you're not sure about mechanical transduction, we mentioned there was Peter last week, the idea of cross friction, which is still, it's
Oh
taught on like a level
yeah,
5. You
I
can't, you
forgot
don't
that
learn
stuff.
that you don't learn that at level 3. No. You have to do a level 4 because that's
Yeah,
only when you're able to rubber an Achilles. And I think it was David Poulter actually on Twitter said, if that was true, then how come it doesn't affect your fingers when you're rubbing from
yeah.
the other end? Why is it not kind of affecting?
Well, it does. You can get a callus, and I'm pretty sure your bone's going to adapt. So, uh, I mean, it does. You can get mechanical transduction at surface level there.
Yeah, at a surface level. Yeah,
I'm
true.
just not sure it would work tissue-wise. I mean,
Yeah.
or you can look at horseback riders. This is one where it's a bit tough. Horseback riders are one of the few people who have a greater stiffness on the inside of their legs. But I would assume that's from the muscles pulling on the tendons, not from the rubbing of the
Right.
saddle.
Oh,
But
interesting.
so I always thought that's what we were doing. I never really thought releasing something never made sense. Because in
Yeah.
general, when you tension a tissue, put tensile force into a tissue, it responds by getting stiffer. It's why I got pissed off with people. I don't know if Pete ever said this, Malieris, but a lot of people in the tendon world would say, don't stretch a tendon. You're going to make it less stiff. And I'm like, you're confusing a short-term response with a long-term response. That's like saying, don't strength train because it's going to make you more tired and weaker. Well, yes, that happens after you work out. It doesn't happen in the long term. Anyway.
Yeah, there's loads of, well, there's plenty of things. You question everything and it's really healthy, but little by little. For the moment, the message for you guys listening to the podcast, if you have been taught cross friction, then you can still do it. Okay, it's just a change in narrative that it's probably not likely that with your hands you're having as much of a change on the person's tissues as you are on their belief that this is going to help, which is perfectly valuable. And if they think it's going to help, and they feel confident, then that could be just as powerful a tool and maybe less destructive a tool than thinking that they need you to fix them by rubbing them.
Yeah, you're going to have a short-term viscoelastic response for sure. So there'll be less stiffness in the short term, just like with any tissue that warms up and you move it.
Yeah,
but you wouldn't have a long-term change, and that's the same with pretty much every intervention. Same with stretching.
But this is part of the problem because on courses still it's assess, do the technique, reassess. Can you see the difference? Wow, my legs are the same length. Wow, my shoulders are the same length. My fascial release rocks. I'm fine. But people don't reassess it kind of quarter of an hour later or in the morning. It's like, so again, I say that with a smile on my face, but if you listen to the podcast, then again, it doesn't mean you stop assessing people at the end of it. Because probably that client or patient wants you to reassess them. They want you to have a little look, but it's just changing the narrative a little bit. Fine. Let me look at my crib sheets. I want to stick on track with regards to things to asking you. Yeah, you mentioned symptom modification. I think that's a really nice couple of words which people can read about. You've done blogs on it. Again, just to remind you, if you're interested in reading after listening to this, then go to greglehman.ca, and there's a whole load of information on there which you can read through in your own time, and laid out, I would say, in a pretty really fair, nice way. It's really balanced. Greg loves challenging himself. He'll challenge his own biases, and it's healthy. It shows you how to just critically appraise yourself and what you've been told and not feel embarrassed about thinking, actually, I'm not quite sure about this, because it's okay being wrong. It's kind of pretty cool, actually. Makes it more exciting. I want to, symptom modification. How can you break that down for someone who goes, huh, what's that?
To me, I'm really interested in how there's different clinicians that teach out there or do research, and they seem very different, like when they have a philosophy of what they're doing. And so what I realized, and of course many other people realize, is that we want to look at what's the common threads between these people who seem very different. And to me, the common thread is that they often do symptom modification. That's what's really guiding their treatment. Although they'll explain it via biomechanical terms, like a Mulligan technique, we're putting the joint into the right position, or Shirley Simon would be like, no, we're getting the joints to move in the most optimal way for them, that allows them to handle the most stress, like in the right way, in a neutral, not deviating from neutral, or even some McKenzie or the mechanical diagnosis and therapy. They were, started out with the disc derangement model, and I know they moved away from that. So there's so many techniques out there that have biomechanical underpinnings that inspired them, but really when you watch them practice, they're led by changes in symptoms. meaning if this hurts, okay, don't do that, do it over here. It's as simple as that sometimes. We hear, like, running is a good example. What's the right way to run? I don't know. Like on your feet. I can agree with that. Forefoot, midfoot, heel strike. I don't know. Try them. So if someone's ankle hurts or their calf hurts when they're running and they run on their toes, well, maybe we could consider not running on your toes for a bit. Does that feel better? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's run like that for a bit. Is running on your toes harmful? No, it was just not the right thing for you at this point in time.
You make it sound.
You know what I mean? It's so bloody simple. We make it so hard.
Oh no, but it's such a challenge for. I can hear the screams in the heads of people listening to the podcast who are going, because you're taking away their power. Traditionally, it's the whole Diane Jacobs Silvernail paper, isn't it, with the operator against the facilitator. Our industry is based on being an operator where you got the white coat on, you got the skills, you lay the hands on, you fix that person. Our whole healthcare system is that. You go to a surgeon, you go to a GP, you get a pill. The idea of just kind of saying something like that to the person in front of you just sounds like we've got nothing to offer. But
yeah, it's still hard though. So I would still take a course with Shirley Sarman. I guess she's not that popular in the UK, because like if my practice style is to teach people different ways to move, that's not always easy. People are creatures of habit. Changing technique is difficult. You know, if you're working with someone who weight lifts and they have a deadlift and they're lifting with a very like non-flex spine, and that's aggravating, well, you might want to teach them to lift with a more flex spine, and that's not always easy. That's a new movement technique. So there's still skill involved in doing that stuff. Changing how people run isn't always easy. I mean, just take more steps, but other than that.
Going back to symptom modification, just give me an idea, just even maybe a visual again of if someone comes to you in shoulder pain.
Sure, easy.
Yeah, go for it. For people who are watching YouTube.
So if you're it's Joe Gibson. I always want to say Jill. Joe Gibson's famous, and maybe Jeremy Lewis. Hurts to raise your arm. Okay. Fundamentally, I mean, most like movement, sport therapists, physios, if we look at what are we always trying to do with our patients, we really just want to get them moving again. Mm-hmm. We want to stress them in some way, and movement and exercise is the stressor usually. So fundamentally, okay, let's find the thing that hurts. I'll lift my arm like this. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, now let's change something about that. Why don't you make a fist? Now lift your arm. Oh my gosh, that feels 90% better. Okay, do lots of that.
Talk me through briefly, without going too deep down to the kind of like neurotags and kind of what's going on in the brain, but what's the most popular explanation for why something like that works?
So you can sometimes I still think there's a nociception role going on here. And if you read like Peter O'Sullivan's old work with cognitive functional therapy, they used to talk about that. It was funny. They'd be like, we're going to have you lift and bend your spine with less muscle stress and less tone and relaxed. And they even quoted McGill, or actually Joan Scannell, who worked with McGill in some of their stuff, saying, oh, there's less load on the spine and that this could be better for the nociceptors. They don't say that anymore. Now they have a more psychological explanation. But you know what? Sometimes it is nociception. Like when you lift your arm and you do a scapular assistance test, that does change the space, the acromial-humeral space, and that might actually change nociception. So it could be very peripheral. The other theories are like someone moves differently, they control their pain, they can't believe that they can bend their spine and it doesn't hurt, or they're not afraid, and then you challenge their sense of self, and they call that like an expectation violation. This is a psychological term seen in the exposure literature. And so suddenly they're just shocked that they can do something that they thought that they couldn't do, and they have to revisit how they view themselves, and that in turn is, there's less fear, there's less worry, there's more confidence, they have hope, and then they have less pain. Could there also be nociception involved? Yeah. But could it be more top-down? Yeah. Do I know? No.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter. And that's why I love the CFT and JP Canero, because they even call these are called behavioral experiments. I'm like, that's what you're doing with your patient. I had a patient this morning. I'm like, I just want you to, would you mind like experimenting with movement? Just see what you can do, what you're comfortable with, what you're afraid of. If you find something that's your little, some trepidation, good. You don't need to do that now, but that's a goal. We can build toward that. It's always like, what are the fundamentals? We never ask those questions. What exactly has to happen for someone to get better? And to me, it's like moving again, stressing the person in some way that they haven't been stressed before, and that catalyzes some adaptation.
I think it's interesting that when I just said like, does it matter? That often the client doesn't, again, care, but it's the therapist who feels, now I've got to give an explanation. I've got to tell them what's happening here because that's why they've come to see me. But this is something that, again, the therapists are taught in their traditional courses that, you've got to explain to the client. They don't care, do they? They just want to be able to lift up their grandkids or throw the ball or serve the ball or whatever it is, or tackle somebody. So don't have to get explanation. Leading on from that, I am interested though, because I think it's only a small jump from symptom modification to maybe the patient or maybe even the therapist thinking, oh, wow, so really we're just playing with the brain and kind of like this pain was always in the head. That's what's happening. We're just doing it a different way to confuse the brain and now it can do it again. We know that's kind of a pretty dark avenue to go down as soon as you start saying it's all in the head and in the brain. So how do you combat that?
Oh, I'm super comfortable. I always think the tissue's involved. I start with the idea that there's some nociception. And then let's do things that can potentially influence nociception. And then let's do things that influence our response to nociception. Like this is the whole idea of care where it's belts and suspenders. If you don't want your pants to fall down, you wear a belt and suspenders. And when you look at most rehab, it tries to be pretty comprehensive. You try to work on a number of things. Everyone, again, that's what you're seeing in most of the models out there. Right? They work on it. So, and I'm a simpleton. So I'm like, the tissue could be sending nociceptive signals. And then it's also what we do with that. There's some altered processing somewhere. So let's work on all of that. Confidence, hope, fear, rumination, anxiety, depression, diet, general activity, social, maybe changing something at the level of spinal cord, the anti-pro nociceptive stuff, and maybe doing something at the tissue where perhaps you can change the production of nociception. I don't know. So you're just working on optimizing the person in front of you. Nice. I choose optimize because it's kind of a full massive word, like capacity you can't nail me down.
It's true. Yeah, you don't like backing yourself into corners, do you?
No.
No, that's nice. That's cool. Yeah. So to avoid this idea that it's all in the head, you just accept the fact, there might be, when you're saying I can't do it with a Canadian accent, nociception, then it's like that's the messages coming from the tissues to the brain, suggesting that there might be, or the brain might interpret as something's wrong, like a chemical change or kind of like a pressure change, or so there could be that going on. But it's not the only input to the brain. There's plenty of other ways. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then what's so cool is, remember, the brain would influence chemical nociception at the level of the tissue. Fears and worry probably create like a pro-inflammatory response down there. That's the neurogenic inflammation. It could certainly probably mechanistically influence what happens at the level of the spinal cord where nociception is amplified, right? So is that a brain thing or is that a body thing? It's both, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's a conclusion that eventually people get to, rather than dividing up the kind of bio from the psycho from the social. Eventually you just realize even mental health and physical health is kind of like a bit of a distinction, which is not as clear and black and white as it should be, as people think it is, rather. Okay, cool. Right. Let me just, I always forget that there's people actually watching this show and, sorry guys, there's some questions here. Let me go back to Daniel Williams. First of all, Daniel said, it'll kill me if I don't mention this. Daniel said, come to our clinic in Birmingham, please, Greg, please. Look, he even said, please. So,
come to Birmingham, sure. Tomorrow.
Yeah, just give him the date. He'll squeeze it in between the Rocky Mountains and Cork. There'll be a flight. Yeah, definitely, Daniel. Talk to Greg. I'm sure he'd love to. You've been to Manchester a few times, haven't you?
Well, I was in Manchester. I just spent a week there in between courses.
That's
just to kill some time.
Yeah.
And then we had to cancel a Manchester course because of like Canada COVID things, and there wasn't a lot of interest. So I guess it wasn't well loved.
Because of COVID, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure, blame it on COVID, not me.
Yeah.
It's not me.
So Daniel says, then follows up with the question: would the gold standard, in your opinion, have both skills to be able to do manual therapy and be able to load the body in the right way for that individual with a better narrative?
Sure. Yeah. I have hesitant, like I'm always hesitant to say something has to be done. My bias again is physical loading. My bias would be there's probably more times where if you had to choose one being more important, it would be the loading, like for certain injuries, especially when you're talking about tissue injury, like when the tissue is really involved, it needs physical stress in order to adapt. So there'd be times I'd be like, my bias would be toward that. But then when it's I don't know. So yeah, but I'm just hesitant to tell people, oh, you have to go get manual therapy skills, because I wouldn't think that I don't think that would be fair. But if you do like doing both, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's I've enjoyed watching you on social media, kind of challenging people, defending stuff because it fits their biases, like the whole loading thing.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised. I listened to your chat on the Massage Collective or Massage Matters. I didn't realize, I have to go back and check it out, that so much research with loading doesn't bother having a control. It's just kind of
God, no. Yeah, it's so like that's when you have these famous tendon researchers just shitting on manual therapy or stretching, and then they talk about loading for a tendon, and you're like, where's the control group? When you're dealing with pain, you better have a bloody good control group, and there rarely is. Or you look at the stretching literature, and again, like people will, I don't do ultrasound or stim, but when there's no control group in those papers on knee pain, these people are improving 40 to 50 to 60%. That's pretty much what someone does in an exercise program when there's no control group. And yet we're like, yay, exercise, but boo, ultrasound. Like we have such an inconsistency. And then when you go and there's only a few studies that will have a control group in the ultrasound stuff. So and then it doesn't outperform the sham, but show me the exercise where exercise is outperforming the sham. I'm not going to go buy an ultrasound machine, but again, I'm just asking for consistency, and it just makes me feel like squeamish to tell someone that they suck and that to do this instead, if I haven't held what I love to do to such a rigorous standard. Like that, I have issues with that, and I see that too much.
But that would be your, what's the word, epitaph?
Yeah,
it would be in it. That's what you've, since I've known you and followed you, and a constant theme in all of your blogs is you want to challenge yourself. You want to make sure that you are not preaching and they're not doing what you preach to yourself. So it's a common theme. Very helpful.
Yeah, it's funny. You can find a paper of mine from 2016 with Kieran O'Sullivan and Sean McAuliffe in Aspetar Sports Medicine, telling people not to do static stretching. And as I was writing that, I'm like, oh shit, I have to really revisit what I think on this, but it's too late now. And then that's what the last 7 years I've really challenged it. And I've made it, well, I've made it pretty, not a 180. It's more that I'm more 360 and that I'm more all accepting. Before I'd say no, and now I have less reason to say no.
Yeah, very healthy. Cool. Question here. Fiona Higgs says, let's bring it up. Again, people, if you listen to the podcast and you like the idea of asking our fantastic guest questions live, then you just got to come along on a Tuesday, 8 o'clock UK time, and you can do things like this. Fiona Higgs says, Greg, I'm interested to know your view on the meaning given to the term biomechanics in the manual therapy fitness industry.
Yeah, I mean, and then she has a little bit more here. It seems to be broadly interpreted and attributed to the cause of a lot of issues. I mean, I still believe posture, load, stress on tissue is often important, right? Like, and that's where symptom modification would come into play. So if someone's sitting upright all day, sitting on a desk, and their neck is really sore, I'd be like, okay, how can we desensitize this system? One thing could be, well, are you able to slouch? Can you put your feet up on the desk? Can you stand instead of sitting all day? So that's a biomechanical approach. The difference is I'm not thinking that there's one right way to move. Or I might add exercise and heavy resistance training for the neck. And I'm not thinking, oh, I need to like tighten your rhomboids and loosen your pec minor to get your neck into this position. I'm thinking, oh, no, exercise is wonderful for a bunch of reasons. It can help you tolerate this sitting. Or maybe you need to start running more. And then we'd be like, okay, so there's our mechanical interventions. What are the other things that we can work on in their life that might be driving this sensitivity? Maybe they have depression that should be treated, or some anxiety that's untreated. What's their sleep like? Are they, doing stuff that they love still? So, again, mechanics, biomechanics still important, but just maybe not the ways that we've been traditionally taught, which is the kinesiopathological model, which I don't ascribe to.
Fiona kind of follows on. I'm just going to read this out. People listening to the podcast, it would be nice if we provided people with the skills to read into the evidence to arrive through the vocational route, but paywalls and uni fees are often a sticking point for many. Yeah,
so if you should all go to Sci-Hub, so SCI-HUB, and then .ST or SC. It's always changing. There's mirrors. And you go to that and you can just put in the title of a journal article or the PMID or the DOI. And you can often get that full journal article.
Oh, it's like a torrent site or something, like a LimeWire for journals and papers.
I forget her name, the woman that runs it. She's just this genius, maybe Estonian PhD. She's the Robin Hood of research. I mean, you've already paid for it.
Research.
You own the research. If you've ever paid a tax, that's gone to a university researcher who has done the research. It's your research. Like, fuck them. Like, we don't need to give this to Elsevier.
It's actually kudos to Fiona Higgs, who's an STA member and has run her own courses, got some big courses. She did a load of shorter courses as well, like even 1-2 day workshops or 1 day workshops for like 3 hours just on how to read papers. So one thing is encouraging critical thinking, but then you've got to be able to look at a study and work out whether they haven't got a control group, like things you said, because that's kind of important these days in a world where we are being given so much evidence. You've got to be able, haven't you, if you're going to stay on top of it, to know how to decipher between something which is just biased and kind of funded by people who have just got one objective. And is that something you kind of go over in your course at all, like how to interpret whether what you're reading is worth the paper it's written on or not?
So probably not explicitly, but we do go through some research. I don't want to bore people. That's what the online course is for, boring people. No, I don't. And so I'll just point out things as we go along, but it's never explicit. Hopefully it's just a drip of a way to think about research.
One of your claims to fame, I don't think anyone's kind of beaten it yet, is having been someone who's been on your courses, you just have got this almost it's almost an illness, mate, I'm gonna have to say, or where you just remember so much. It's there in the front of your head. The paper, I think it was this, I think the co-authors were this, and I think that it's just something you've always had, is it? It just retains, just stays there.
I mean, I've always read a lot of papers and they stick around. But again, often it's just like, it's like contextual learning. Someone says something and then it triggers something and then it's linked to something else. So that, I don't know. It's how I file research is via the authors. It's harder when there's new authors coming up. That's what always makes it tough. But once you get started, you realize how authors have like relationship with other authors. So if you know one, you're linked to a bunch of others. I don't know.
It's quite incredible then. It's not an illness. I
thought you were going to say I jump around a lot when I teach.
No, that's not it. It's just your memory. But yeah.
The course.
I don't know if you're jumping around much. Is that the people?
So I don't tell people. But if you actually tried to follow my notes, you can't, because I change the order of things depending on where the discussion goes.
I thought you meant physically jumping about. I thought you mentioned some kind of like motor neuron thing. Oh, right. Okay, got you.
Yeah, I change. Like if someone brings up something, I'll just jump to that part of the lecture and then come back. Like rather than forcing people to go in my flow, I try to go on the flow of the class. I know there's people that don't like that, so I apologize to you in advance. We're going to cover it all. I just don't want to you get boring. You could tell when people are bored and you're like, I got to wrap this up. There's no point talking. Let's move
Or you
on.
just show a picture of your daughter at a very early age, just covered in crap. That's kind of a way to get people back on track as well, isn't it? The
I forgot about that story.
Yeah. You can't really do that. I'm hoping you can't show photos in this age now, still in the same kind of predicament.
No, but
go on.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking as well, also, which is a classic one 7 years ago, the fact that one of your daughters was a crawler but didn't go in a straight line, kind of veered off, didn't she? To the right or left? Yeah, you remember that?
I forgot about that. That was Betty. That's not in the course. See, I got to bring that in. I don't know where that one is. Or who is that? Maybe that was Mimi. Yeah. That's back. I got to put that one back in.
That's classic. Yeah. That's really good. It is a common trait. I mean, again, I love comedy. I like humor. That's why Lorimer Moseley was sold to me straight away. I think that's why he's been so successful, because he manages to explain things with that sense of humor and that approachability. You do very much the same thing with a lot of irony. I love the videos you've produced with family. I can't remember what they're called now, but showing the school of whatever it was and kind of like doing a posture analysis and just showing with great irony and sarcasm. That was fantastic as well. And all kind of look with a fear on your face of kind of your wife getting home and then asking what you've been doing all day. And there's a video on YouTube with 1 million downloads.
With Mimi in her underwear.
Exactly, that was the one.
Diaper, yeah.
But yeah, if you like a little bit of sense of humor in your learning, which I think is makes it all playing, it makes it easy to learn, and do check out some of the videos as well on YouTube. What are some of we're getting close to time now, just to talk a little bit more about the course itself. What are some of in your time, some of the kind of eureka coin dropping moments which you've seen people on your course have, where they thought, that makes so much sense now? What are some of the things which they might pick up?
So I don't know if people do it in the course, because I think they might already be on their way once they come to my course. But I will quite often get emails or Facebook messages where people are like, not apologetic, but like, okay, it's been 5 years. I get, like of me listening to you, and I get it. It's okay. I'm all on board. Like I get a lot of that, or it's just the slow change over time. Like,
so your courses have actually got a long shelf life. If it's 5 years, people still thinking about it, and then getting.
So no, I think they might just have seen me online, and then. But I will have people who take the course and are like, this. Because I don't want to tell people that they're doing it wrong. There's just not. It's just there's other ways to do it, and we can have a bigger tent. That's the idea. And so I get a lot of the Monday morning like, no, this helps. I was on this path. I feel better on this path now. I don't feel so alone. You've helped sharpen my thinking in this area. You've given me more examples of how to use it. I feel better now. That's it. Because honestly, for so long, me as a therapist, our whole industry, a huge part of it is making people feel stupid so that they feel like they need to take your course. And I think I might have told this analogy with you there, where I'm like, you guys are smart. There's a point where all of us come up to a wall and we think that there's answers on the other side of the wall. And there are, but no one's over there yet. Right? Don't think that there's people on the other side of that wall that know something that you don't know. They just pretend they're on that side of the wall and they're not, right? They just make you feel like shit. And so you jump all these hoops and you're not on the other side of that wall. Do you know what I mean? Like, have you seen that? Like, I hate that stuff where people make it so hard or make people feel like they don't know anything, or you're not loading right. Oh, that's not the right way to prescribe action. Oh, you did 6 reps. You didn't do 3 reps. You did 12 reps instead of 4. You know nothing about strength and conditioning. I'm like, you don't know shit. That's an old textbook idea. If you knew more, you would know that isn't right. But anyways.
Yeah, the power of FOMO, fear of missing out, isn't it? Latest thing, you need to pay for it, otherwise you're going to be doing it all wrong. But again, that's why, I mean, that's when people ask me what CP to do, I want to make it really clear, and we did it at the beginning of this month, that there's no such thing as the perfect CPD for everyone. It depends where you are in your journey. It depends what sort of person you are, what you're trying to achieve, whether you work by yourself in a full clinic, what sort of clients you're getting, what your target audience is, so many different factors. But one of the take homes that I personally give for you is that people will come out with a sensation they can do so much more, even though they went in thinking this is going to change everything I've learned and it's going to be really scary. It's kind of liberating, because suddenly you are actually working with the person in front of you, and it's exciting. It's a jigsaw. You can turn around next week and go, you know what, this isn't working. That's cool. We tried it. Let's have a little look at this now. What happened to you? This, and you really are working with someone. You know, it really is. I don't even like using the word therapy anymore, because there's kind of connotations of doing something to somebody. I wish there was another word, but
It's
you
coaching.
really are. Coaching,
coaching,
yeah.
That might be sometimes a better word with what we're doing.
And it's a beautiful thing. You're showing that person's life, and you're facilitating, you're helping them, and that's normally a faster route to helping them with their whatever pain experience they're going through. So it is exciting, and you come away not with all the answers, but you come away a bit like a Bruce Lee kind of thing going on, where the glass has been emptied of its water, so now you can kind of fill it up again now, as opposed to just chucking stuff on top and just thinking, oh my God, I've got too much to do. So fair analogy. Does your course help people empty their glass so they can fill it up themselves?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I would also say it just sort of gives people other options as well. You can still do what you're doing, but maybe you can add these other things.
Cool.
That's the tweak. And you see that, I think, with Peter O'Sullivan's course. It's really good doing that well. You can do a lot of the stuff, and then why don't you add some of these things? You know, that's the idea. You simplify so you have space to add other things. That's how I like to view it.
Do people who do your course, if people have been listening to this and they're like, you know what, I like the sound of this, Greg, that's okay, I fancy that. Is there a certain amount of prior knowledge that they need, or pre-reading, or do you get people from different professions and industries? Or?
Yeah, again, because it's not about the hardcore neuroscience of pain. I don't think we need to be neuroscientists. It's simple key messages. So so there's not a lot. I mean, again, the online course has like 2 extra hours of strength and conditioning stuff, just the nitty-gritty details. So, but I don't do that in the course because it's too whatever academic, but that reference is always there for people. So there isn't really, I don't know. I don't think so.
No. As long as they've just got the desire to help people, then that's kind of the only way to get through the door. You just got to want to be able to help people, which is what we're supposed to be all in it for, isn't it? I should point out that, again, I mean, you were one of the first people I know, I think, who were putting free stuff up online, not just free stuff, but like huge amounts of stuff. And if you go to, let me just put this on big screen for people watching this. If you do go to greglehman.ca, there's a fantastic recovery strategies pain guidebook, which, I mean, again, it just ticks my boxes, but it's beautifully artworked. It's got some amazing ideas, and strategies, which you can give to your patients. You can give it to them to have a little look at in their own time, but also as a younger therapist or less experienced therapist, have a little read through it. And the coin will start dropping for you, and it's free. It's like probably, I would say, one of the best forms of free CPD out there on the market, and it's just read it in your own time. And I love the diagrams and everything and the analogies used. It's a really healthy thing. So that's something you might want to have a look at if you're interested in doing one of the courses. And it's like being translated. And how many languages are we at now? Isn't it like?
Oh, at least 10, but maybe they're not all on the website. I get a little lazy.
Yeah, no, really. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't remember when you first produced it. It was quite a few years ago, wasn't it? But it's
just there's no reason to change it. Because I don't get into the hardcore debate. So it's just simple fundamentals. Someone's like, hey, Greg, there's a new definition of pain. Who cares? Patients don't need to know it. I don't really need to know it. I know that they changed it, but it doesn't change jack shit about what we do in practice. So who cares?
Who cares, exactly. So there we go, people. It's 9:05, so we've been through an hour already. I apologize if there's a few questions in here which I didn't get to, but if you're listening to the podcast and you've got more questions, then as always, just go over to the YouTube channel. You'll find the video for this there, and there's a comment box, so you can always put questions in there. Anything that I feel would be relevant, I'll send to Greg and then come back and give you an answer. If people want to contact you directly, Greg, where should they go?
Oh, Twitter, just Greg Lehman. But Daniel has one question here. I will say we do touch on how to communicate. There's a lot of like group breakouts with clinical case studies. And so anytime we do like a physical intervention, the practice is also, well, how would you explain this in an optimistic way to your patient? So we try to do that type of communication skills as well. And the day 2, like the last 2 to 3 hours, is just simple key messages, but it's sprinkled throughout the course. So I think being a communicator is important. It's definitely where I need to get better.
I love it the way you
totally lost. I've lost a patient in the past month. I didn't. Yeah, I read it wrong. Whatever. Their loss.
Exactly. I was going to say, you're going to, aren't you? You know, you just you become a better person for it. Their loss.
I'm a bad person. I lost it. No. You can all get better there. Yeah.
Wicked. Right. So reconciling biomechanics with pain science, Cork, Ireland on April the 2nd and the 3rd at Pilates Physio Cork. And for full details of the course, then head to greglehman.ca. And like I said, there's a whole load of other information which you can have a look at whilst you're there. I'm going to say goodbye to people in the live lounge, Greg. Don't press any buttons. I'll just say thanks to you in person once these people have gone. If you have enjoyed this, you listen to the podcast, maybe you want to join live, then our CPD Focus continues next week. We have got special guest Angela Jackson, who's going to be joining us. We're going to be taking a look at working with teenage athletes. Angela Jackson has got a fantastic website, angelajacksonphysio.com, and her speciality is working with what are definitely not little people. They are people in their own right. So we'll be focusing on working with teenage athletes next week. As always, 8 o'clock UK time on YouTube exclusively. So we'll be doing that. To people who joined us live today, thanks very much for giving us up your time. And also huge thanks to Greg Lehman for giving up your time, Greg. Take care, and we'll see you hopefully in a week. But if not, listen to the podcast and don't forget, leave us a review. Thank you.